Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. This episode, we have not one, but two special guests, Kate and Natalie. Professionals in Washington, D.C. by day, avid crafters by night, they combine their forces on all things art, craft, and cosplay. Kate is an avid reader of the sci-fi and fantasy genres, including Heinlein, Gaiman, and George R.R. Martin, as long as he actually finishes his next book. She collects comics with a focus on strong female characters. Natalie spends her free time finding creative home improvement projects and crocheting. Her latest work was a mermaid tale. She enjoys cooking, but prefers baking for the decorating aspect. Together, they form the dynamic duo known as Conjure Corps, a duo who creates things from scratch. They'll find a way to make it real. They utilize traditional methods along with leatherworking and thermoplastics, as well as resin casting. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, Kate and Natalie.
Hi, thank you for having us. Yes, thanks.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Thanks for being willing to come on and talk to me for a little bit.
Our pleasure.
So, how would you describe fandom?
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot and listening to some of your other episodes, and I don't know that there's a whole lot more to say other than I really like the aspect of fandom where you start meeting all of these other people who share what you thought was kind of a bizarre interest. And the more you talk to people, the more you find out there's a lot of people with your passion. And then you share that passion. And then you can just have these incredibly nerdy conversations and go into these absurd details about things like comic books, for example. There was a time when in my life, I didn't read comic books. I didn't know people who read comic books. And since I've started reading comic books, I can't even tell you how many times I'm commuting home from DC on the train and I'm reading a comic book and somebody sits down beside me and says, "You don't look like someone who'd be into that." And then all of a sudden we strike up a conversation and they're telling me about some, when they were 10 and were into this Silver Surfer thing or something. And you just find this commonality that you wouldn't have even guessed existed. And I find that really exciting.
And I think, too, something that makes fandom, in my opinion, a little easier now than maybe in the past, too, is like the ability to, through social media and like blogging and like seeing what everyone else is saying. Today, I know we'll get into it, but like Game of Thrones, I was like, what's everyone else thinking? I could instantly like look at Twitter, I could read blogs this morning. Like, what did everyone think of certain episodes? Like, I think it's such a different dynamic than it might have been like 10, 15 years ago or more.
You just can connect to people.
It's easier to connect to people and kind of see, what's going on and what everyone else's thoughts are, and really just be able to, participate in the forums and stuff. So I think it's definitely, I think, a lot easier now than it might have been, in the past. So.
Absolutely, because in my generation, and I date myself all the time as I record this podcast, but there was a time where people would not read comic books out in public unless you were, you're the nerd, like the nerd in school, and you carried around your comics like I did and got bullied for it. And the only solace that I had was like AOL back in the way back days when you dialed up, or finding those online bulletin board systems and connecting with those people that had those shared interests, and just having to manage it through meeting at a comic book shop or just happening to stumble upon another person or two in high school or middle school that were really into what you were into.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, now there are just so many more ways.
Yeah.
Now it seems we kind of dominate. Everyone has something nowadays, as far as like even the most casual person, if you ask about Game of Thrones, they've at least heard of it.
We were just having that conversation at our meeting earlier, in terms of the woman who wants us to make the dress for her was mentioning that her husband isn't into any of this stuff, thinks it's kind of weird, but he loves Game of Thrones. And I think that's something that you find across the board. And a lot of people will have at least seen some of the Marvel movies or something along those lines that there's a little bit to identify with. And then once you've gotten that far, a lot of people find this is really fun and entertaining stuff. And it's a really, really warm and supportive and just a great group of people to know.
Absolutely. The best friends I have are people that I've made through fandom, like connections, whether it was Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Star Wars. I mean, the list goes on.
Because you're not coming from a random place of, hi, will you be my friend? It's
something to bond over.
You already are. Yeah, exactly. You have a common thing.
Yeah.
So what fandoms are you both into?
Oh, goodness. All right. So I guess the daddy of all fandoms would be probably Game of Thrones. That was one of my first. As you mentioned in the intro, I'm a big sci-fi person, and Dune, all of the Frank Herbert Dune novels was probably one of my earliest fandoms as well. I have lately become a complete Image Comics junkie. I prefer what Image is publishing so much more than Marvel or DC. In particular, I just geek out over Saga. And I'm not sure what the language requirements on this show, but I love Khaleesi DeConnick's Bitch Planet so much. It makes me cry. And also love her husband, Matt Fraction, sex criminal. So maybe this is going more adult than your typical show. Sorry.
It is A-okay.
I could go on and on, but I'll let Natalie go.
Yeah, Kate's got a lot. Every time I hang out with her, she's got something new that she's into, and the list keeps growing. Mine's a little more slim, I think, because like I said, I mean, largely where I get into a lot of it is the costuming and the cosplay, and actually it was so funny as we were watching Game of Thrones last night. I was like texting Kate, like, we need to make this costume, we need to make this costume, and Cersei's coronation outfit at the very end. Oh my gosh, like. I was like, you have to make this next because she's more about the Cersei character, I think, than myself. Well, we can't have two Cerseis go to run fair, so she has to do it. But yeah, Game of Thrones is the big one, and I think we have like a community of friends, and we have like a group text where we message back and forth about the show. So I think that definitely is a lot of fun. Actually, when I sew, I like to watch a few different shows. As I'm sewing, and I'm only a few seasons in, so don't judge me, but I really like Buffy. Got into that one. I have a lot of friends too. They're like, what?
Are you kidding? They talk about Joss Whedon and Buffy like all the time.
But I'm just saying though that like, a lot of people are like, you haven't watched the whole.
Oh, you haven't already watched.
Yeah, I haven't already watched it. I'm just getting into it. So I'm only a few seasons in.
I'm worse than you.
I like the show.
I haven't actually watched Buffy.
Ew.
Exactly. But I have watched Firefly.
Yay.
Love Firefly. And I tell this to everyone, that is one of my absolute dream group cosplays is to do Firefly someday.
And we've been talking about it.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously Firefly would be one of mine as well. Okay, I also have some ridiculous ones. This is one of the most embarrassing things in the world, but I am ridiculously obsessed with Fast and Furious.
What? I didn't know that.
And I just love Dwayne Johnson in general.
I do like him. Yeah, he's fun.
But I mean, cosplay in and of itself is kind of a fandom as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course the Renaissance festivals. So.
But it's really interesting. And like Kate mentioned when we were talking earlier, cosplay has so many different levels of people who, people who just love to wear costumes, they don't make them, people who just make them, don't wear them, people who make them and wear them, I think there's so many different levels. But I think that, like Kate said, the cosplay community in itself has been like a really interesting take. And you kind of watch TV shows and movies differently. Once you're kind of looking at what you want to make next, I think that's kind of an interesting element. And it's kind of fun to bond with people over how you make things and how you think you might approach them. And gosh, there's like endless tutorials online and how to make certain things and different techniques. And it's just kind of overwhelming how much stuff's out there, but it's really interesting to kind of like learn new techniques and teach yourself new things. And then when you meet people in person, ask them about
I love how even on Instagram, our Instagram family, we have people DMing us like after Game of Thrones episodes of, oh my goodness, I so hope you're going to make this costume or that costume. Mm-hmm. So it's, like I said, it's a fandom unto itself of people who are just really into cosplay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that about sums them all up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Or, maybe not. Vikings.
But, oh yeah, we love the show Vikings. Kate got me into it. And what are there, 5 seasons?
There's 4. Well,
the 5th one's on TV, right?
4. We're through half of 4. Half of 4.
Okay, I'm only up to like.
You're end of 3. You're
I'm end of 3. Yeah. So I'm not as caught up because my Hulu doesn't have.
Right, because we binged just in time to start season 4, and then I sold you on it, and then you started while season 4 was live. So yeah.
But I think one, there was also, what was the challenge? It was for the armband. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, yes. Do you watch Vikings?
I do not.
Okay, you have to put that next on your list. It's really good.
Yes, one of the main characters, because
Rollo
of course, they're Vikings. And so he had an Instagram contest where you post a photo of yourself in your best Viking-inspired cosplay, and you could win one of the pieces of jewelry that he actually wore on the show. And yeah, we
tried. He liked our photo.
We felt like that was a big win.
Yeah, we didn't win, but he
liked us.
Yeah, he liked us. But yeah, we
were
so excited for that. We like put on our costumes, like went out in the woods and took pictures, like hoping we'd get something good. But I mean, our costumes were well received at the Renaissance Festival, so that was good. But I guess,
are there any others that we're missing?
Fandoms,
fandoms that we're missing.
I think I told you about this earlier, but I don't know if it's considered a fandom, but I have like
that's the hardest part about this.
I know. It's all in how you guys, I guess, you define it. I religiously watch Judge Judy every single day.
That's your Fast and Furious. It's fine.
It's like my Fast and Furious. My husband comes home. He's like, "You're weird." I can say the whole intro. I have it memorized, but anyway, and then Law and Order. But I was a criminology major back in the day, so I have like this unusual obsession with TV shows like that. So
I'm sure there's plenty of internet groups for Judge Judy fans. So I mean, anything's a fandom as long as there's a group of people that are interested in talking about it and liking it.
Absolutely.
Now, I will say that if I give up my time for Vikings, I definitely want you guys to continue trekking on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
I did, again, not to date myself, but I do remember it was when it was actually on television. And I had a girlfriend who was very obsessed with it, and I watched a few episodes. And then I don't know. I think it was Angel that really put me off.
No,
I'm serious. I don't know. I didn't like David Boreanaz all that much.
We can't be friends.
But I would definitely go back and give it a try, just given my later life love of just, what did you call it? Like the Whedonverse?
The Whedonverse, yes. Yes. In fact, I have 3 kids, and one of them is named Xander.
No.
And his middle name is Shepard.
Oh my God.
From Firefly.
Yeah.
And then his younger sister is named Willow Leia.
No way! Oh my God, Willow.
So some of our other podcast friends here in the Northern Virginia area were over at our house on Saturday for a beer event, and his daughter is named Coraline Jubilee, which I just love because Coraline obviously hits the Neil Gaiman world, and Jubilee being X-Men. I'm like, wow, you are dedicated.
That's cool.
Yeah, I lucked into a great wife who went along with the names that I was interested in.
That's awesome.
So we've talked a lot about your fandoms. You've got a ton of them. Yeah. Is there anyone that you'd love to just start off with first? I mean, Game of Thrones finale was last night. If you want to just go with that,
I mean, couldn't be better. Yeah,
we're on a high.
And I want to just mention that the black dress that Circe wears got her own article, or the dress got its own article either on BuzzFeed or Entertainment Weekly, on one website where they went over the different details of the dress and the armor that got the shoulder pad armor.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, I need to take a look at that for some good reference photos because I really, really want to make that happen. Get out of my season 2 Blackwater armor.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Move on.
And the chain in the front was beautiful.
Yeah, that was just so stylistically different than anything that I've seen her wear before.
Absolutely.
That's actually
she meant business.
Well, this is something that I have read before, and reading interviews with the show's at least one time and maybe now main costume designer. that they use Cersei's costumes to convey sort of her development and her story arc, and how her colors change to represent either like her arrogance or her mourning, or now like I think the black is just like this, like she is just, I don't even know how to describe what she's become, but there's this darkness that has filled her.
I think darkness is an appropriate word. Yeah, she's just like, she's in a different place right now, I think, where she's coming through. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting, we didn't talk about that earlier. That's interesting take on it.
Now, did either of you get into Game of Thrones before the TV series started? Were you book readers of it, or were you just, when it came out on TV, was it something that drew you in there?
Well, it did actually initially draw me in on television, and I watched maybe 3 episodes of season 1 before I started reading the books. And since then, I have read all of the books. I've read the entire sequence. What, you said 3 times? Is it 3 times? Well, okay, so I read all of it twice, and then I think what I did for the 3rd is I went and Feast of Crows and Dance with Dragons, of course, actually take place in the same time frame, and so I found all the articles online that tell you what order to read the chapters so that you're reading them chronologically correct for all the characters, and so that was my 2.5 read. Yeah, so I got drawn in by the shows, but then I became a devotee of the books very quickly.
Same here. I didn't even know that there was a book series until after the first season had finished, and then a friend of mine educated me a little bit harshly, and I got the telephone size books from him and brought them home and just fell in love with the world that George R.R. Martin created. Just all the detail that they go into, and when you're watching the show, they touch on things very gently on some of the outlying storylines, but in the books it's so much more.
Well, I just always comment on that.
Like, I do. I'm
we'll
always
talk about certain scenes in like the show, and she's like, "Oh, but you have no idea about the books." I have not. This is Natalie. I have not read the books yet. I plan to.
Shame.
I know. Shame. I have not read the books yet. It's on my to-do list. I actually get sick on public transportation reading, so I can't on my way to work.
Which is when I read most of my books.
Which is when you read yours. Yeah. So. No, it's on my to-do list. Like when I take a long flight somewhere, I plan to sit down and read them. But Kate always makes the point that, oh, well, in the books it does this. Or
we were just talking about this with the finale last night. Of course, the Arya scene was just
oh my gosh,
fantastic, and
she's so awesome.
And what I was saying to Natalie is like, I was really surprised it was Arya, but they did actually the Frey pie in the books.
Yep.
But I just remember one of the best things that I remember from my very, very first reads through the books was after Oberyn was killed by the Mountain, and that meant Tyrion was going to die. Mm-hmm. And I had read that going to bed. Like I read that like right before I was about to go to sleep. And needless to say, I didn't sleep. And I just laid up all night, like wondering. I don't know why I didn't just get up and continue reading, because I was just determined I was going to get to sleep. But I just laid there and I like worked this out in my head. And I'm like, okay, all right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I'm like, oh my God, Jaime's going to save him. I know Jaime's going to save him somehow. Jaime's a good person. And he's going to intervene when it's needed. And like, this is how worked up I would get over these stupid books. And yeah, I think they go on. I think they go a lot more into the relationship between Jaime and Brienne in the books. And I think if you've read the books, maybe or maybe not, you can tell me since you've also read the books. Natalie also happens to be a Jaime Lannister fan, but I'm a fan of Jaime Lannister because I think in the books you get more of an understanding of why he is the way he is, and he's not an evil human being per se. And also the relationship between he and Cersei by the end of the books that we've had so far is quite different than what they're doing on the show, which I actually like a lot better.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that one of my best friends who watches Game of Thrones and has read the books is a bit disappointed in, is the change for Jaime's character as far as how it relates to Cersei and their relationship, because she definitely is more of a Jaime and Brienne like person that's really into them as maybe not even as a couple, although that's just like where they've been heading with them in the book series.
Or Mend and Brienne. on the show.
Oh my gosh, there's some funny names out there too. Have you seen any of those?
I don't think so.
There's some funny ones. It's like the girl you have a crush on, and then it's Brienne, and then it's like, but you, and it's like.
So, yeah, I feel
There's
like
some good ones.
I feel like they've weakened Jaime in the show to an extent.
I think they did. I mean, I think it's just because of the way that they set up his relationship with Cersei, and he being in King's Landing at the time of Joffrey's funeral, because he's not in that scene, like he's not in that book at all.
Exactly. But now, this is one thing that Natalie and I were discussing earlier from last night's episode, that we feel this may have to be a turning point for a number of reasons. Mostly, they went into some detail on the previous week's episode with Tyrion explaining the reason that Jaime killed Aerys was because he had this wildfire cached and was planning to like set the city on fire. And well, now his own crazy ass sister did exactly that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he'll frown upon that. Maybe also the fact that she cared more about her own self-preservation than her son's
happiness.
Her last remaining son's happiness. Yeah.
I felt so bad last night. I mean, I wanted Marjorie to just escape, get away, but there would have been, even if she had gotten past the sparrows, there have been no chance.
Nope. Yeah. I mean, she's been a schemer and whatever. But I really wanted her to get out for Tommen's sake.
Yeah.
I think that scene is one of the more heartbreaking ones, where you're on the window, you're looking out the window, you hear Tommen put down the crown, and it kind of does the little ringing sound as it's settling, and then he just falls out.
Well, such a simple scene, but oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, the other thing Natalie and I were discussing was kind of like the full circle nature of this story.
Yeah.
Because if you think back to either the first book or the first season, and how this whole mess sort of began was Jaime pushing Bran out of a window. And
now their last surviving son
dies by throwing himself out of a window.
Yeah.
And so it's just like this almost poetic justice.
So I have to ask, who are your favorite characters?
Well, I think we both said Jaime. Like, I think we're both gunning for Jaime, and
I have many Jaime theories. What I imagine Jaime will do and the greatness that he will manifest, because he is in fact a man with honor, despite the stereotype he decided to become of himself.
Well, it's a little bit of what we said. We were talking about this earlier, in that I was telling Kate, I really did not like Jaime or Tyrion at the school. And like I said, I've not read the books. I've only watched the show. I did not like either of them when the show started. And I've really come to love both of those characters. Tyrion's really coming into himself. Like, he's like this wise advisor. Like, he's amazing. And Jaime's really finding his purpose. Like, he, especially seeing with Brienne, I think paint him in such a different light, and as someone who is capable of compassion.
Even that last scene at River Run, when she's leaving in the boat, and they just have that last little glance.
Yeah.
So
I think those are two of my favorites, probably, of the whole series.
Who else are some of my, okay, so this is one of mine that everybody underappreciates, and I like Sam Tarly. I just...
Oh, yes, you've got my guy.
Going to be a wizard.
I love that scene though when he gets to the library. I'm like, you're just like, yeah, you're there.
Well, I just love when it was in the first season when all of the Night's Watch young folk got their assignments, and John is just all pouting because he got made a steward and he always wanted to be a ranger, and he's complaining about this to Sam. I always wanted to be a ranger. And Sam says to him, well, I always wanted to be a wizard. And now, lo and behold, he's going to be a wizard. And he is going to find the way to kill the White Walkers. And he's got Heartsbane with him. And there is more backbone to him than I think people give him credit for.
Absolutely.
Definitely. He's always been, besides Tyrion, I mean, I've loved Tyrion, especially with Peter Dinklage portraying him. But beyond Tyrion, it's always been Sam, because Sam, I always gravitate towards those sidekick characters on TV shows or movies, books. I'm always going for I'm always that supporting role person where I just love their determination, their heart, their loyalty to their friends. I mean, it cuts across the board. And I loved when he took his family sword,
Yes.
because I mean, it's one of the last Valyrian swords in Westeros to begin with.
Exactly.
And he's kind of got that knowledge that the Valyrian steel is something that's going to have to be either crafted or made available. But I'm really interested to see how he comes across. Like, I really want it to just be like, oh, not divine intervention, but just like a mixture of like fate and luck and him just pulling out that right scroll or that right book. And
something we were kind of talking about too was one of the things that we liked so much about Tyrion and also Jaime was, you know, they could have stuck with this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of, you know, everyone calls you the imp, so you're this, you know, drunk Lannister with prostitutes, or you're Jaime Lannister, where, you know, you're known as the Kingslayer, or, you know, the guy that stabs people in the back and you can't be trusted. And, you know, they aren't those guys anymore. They're not those characters. And I think, you know, it would have just been easy for them to just sort of like sit back and be like, I'm a Lannister and this is me, you know, but I love the characters that become.
The growth of all these characters. I think we should. Oh gosh, what about any female? Who are our favorite female characters?
No more male characters. We need a female.
I know. Now I feel bad. We're all about strong female characters, and all we're talking about is.
But that brings us to another point that we were talking about earlier. It's really interesting, I think, in the Game of Thrones series when you sit back and you look at all the female characters coming to. Like, they're rising. You know, you've got Lady Mormont, my favorite.
Oh, yes.
She's awesome.
Like, yes, those 62 men.
Oh, she's amazing. She just rallied the troops there.
I would listen to Lady Mormont.
I would. She's wise beyond her, 12 years?
Or 10 years.
Did you see the meme that was going around with, if she had dragons, it would have ended 2 years ago?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
She's been one of the greatest additions as a minor character that this show has ever had.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we've got Lady Mormont, we've got Daenerys, you know,
Daenerys is finally coming back to Westeros.
You've got Cersei, who's just
on the
throne.
You've got Dorne.
You've gotten Dorne.
Elia?
Sorry.
Mama Sand Snake.
Mama Sand Snake, yeah.
And then you've got Olenna Tyrell, who's like behind the scenes, like major puppet master.
Revenge on Cersei, yeah.
And so for the fact that men have dominated. Oh, and Yara.
Yara, yes.
Asha, who was Asha in the books, but Yara in the TV show. Yeah, like she has clearly made her power play for the Iron Islands and it's done quite well in her meetup with Daenerys. And so all of a sudden all these women are just the ones in power everywhere.
It's really interesting, cool. Like how the tables have turned a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's been as I was talking with a friend yesterday, the decimation of the great houses and their heirs, like the houses are basically gone. I mean, between the Tyrells, there's no heir. The Martells don't have an heir, but they've always been based on matriarchy. They don't care if there's a queen or a king.
A great point. Yeah. It's really interesting how that the lines are being blurred and the families are changing and it's really.
Yeah, so you're right. Of the great houses, I mean, we've still got, depending which theories you do or do not believe, we have several Lannisters running around, but they may all be Targaryens.
Absolutely.
The same with, of course, we know now about Jon, so we can say it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that's out finally.
Yeah. Part Stark, but really a Targaryen.
What's been your favorite addition for this season? Like, what was the thing that you really enjoyed this season? If you could pick one thing.
Okay, so as a overall, the fact that we're off book and yet still on book has been kind of cool for me. But I think my favorite moment was after Arya was watching the play, making fun of everything that happened in King's Landing, which she, of course, lived through, and this killed her family, and then she went and got Needle. That was just one of my favorite moments.
But, you know, at least the way I felt watching the show, I just kind of felt like her storyline, I was like, okay, do something or move on, you know? And it's like you said with with Needle, it was just, I'm glad she was watching this after maybe, I don't know, forgetting, or I don't even know.
Trying to avoid.
Like maybe trying to like do something else, or maybe, I don't even know, but it was nice to finally see it sort of click in her head that like she was meant for so much more, that, you know.
She's a Stark, by God.
She's not a girl with no name. Like,
she's Arya Stark. Yeah, seeing Arya Stark become Arya Stark again, I think that's probably one of my favorites.
Who would you like to see end up on the Iron Throne at the end of, as everything washes out and the war is over? Iron Throne, who's on it?
Jaime Lannister.
No, I want Jon Snow.
No, I do want Jon as well.
I think Jon, you know, he's just,
but he's
his
like a
storyline. It's like, you know, to see that I'm such a big fan of someone who seems like they come from nothing, or someone that thinks they're not worthy, or someone that, I mean, even the scene where he was telling Sansa, oh, I made up mom and dad's room for you, basically, and she's like, no, it's, you deserve it, and he's like, but I'm not Stark. Like, I feel like he's still second guessing like his word, and that he's an important person, but I think it's such a humbling experience that he feels that way. And I think that it shows in the way that he kind of leads everybody. I like that he's like that. But I want someone like him on the throne, so that's me.
He's a natural leader.
He's a humble leader, and I love that.
Yes.
Because there's lots of people who are natural, quote-unquote, leaders in the show. They may not be the best leaders, but he's like a humble leader. He's a leader. He will be on the battlefield with his troops, fighting. He's not like a Ramsay where he's like, I want to kind of hang back and let people die for me. Like, he is a guy that's like out there with people, like side by side.
That's why he inspires people.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why everyone who reads the books or sees the show just loves him, because he's just
so real, and he doesn't think he's better than anybody. I like that.
You both like the strong female characters. What's your opinion about Sansa?
Oh, number one, she couldn't have had Littlefinger get there on time.
Really? I know.
Oh, I think it was really, really nasty of her to just let Jon go into battle thinking he's facing certain death, when she knew that she had this backup plan all along. Like, as if she couldn't have somehow coordinated, like, to help draw that into the overall scheme, instead of letting them do this nearly fatal attack of just throwing themselves into the middle of Ramsay's army. I didn't like that.
Yeah. Well, and with Sansa, I also have like mixed feelings about like her and the help that Brienne's offered. You know, it's just like Sansa's had so many opportunity to like let people help her, or to get out of certain situations, or to tell the truth, or like with, you know, I talked about this with Arya, like telling the truth at the very beginning. And I mean, there are so many situations where I feel like Sansa's really made a lot of really horrible decisions, and it's not like she made one or two and then learned from it. She just continuously makes bad decisions.
No, she does learn, but her bad decisions get more dangerous.
True. Yeah, true.
Yeah. Her selfish decisions.
Absolutely.
Like, there have definitely been moments this season when I've been sympathetic to her.
True.
Like, her interaction with Theon made me feel like, okay, you've gotten a bit off your high horse.
Yeah.
And have come down to the level of being a person because of everything you've been through. But now that she's back in a position, she seems like she's ready to just go back to being regular old Sansa.
Agreed.
I could definitely see that.
No, how do you feel?
I feel like she had her best season this season.
I agree.
Like, she wasn't really just sitting around doing nothing, and she wasn't really sidelined. Like, she finally took things into her own hands.
As a character, Sansa has been the most relevant ever. And actually, my husband and I were talking about, like, because we're always big, like, Emmy, Academy Award speculators, whatever. And so, you know, usually it's Emilia Clarke who gets nominated for the show. And I'm like, you know what? Honestly, I feel like Sophie Turner deserves it this year. Like, she's done her best work that we've ever seen from her. And I thought she's been great as an actress, even if I hate the character.
Okay, agreed. Even though we just trash-talked her a little bit in terms of her choices and decisions in life.
But it's good if you're hating the character.
This was her best season in terms of her character. And I do like to see, like, her interactions with, like, you know, Peter Baelish, and how much more grown up she seems now than she did in season 1. And it's almost a little sad to see, like, kind of how life's really just kind of what she's been through, and like you can kind of see it in her face, you know? She's not this like little girl anymore. She's this woman who's just been through a lot.
She feels like she doesn't have any other choices.
Yeah, and she's just, I mean, her discussions with John, where she says, you know, if we don't fight, if we don't win, you know,
I'm not going back to him.
Yeah, we can't. Alive. I can't go back to him alive. Like she literally, and I see where they're at, but you know, she's just like, it's like this cutthroat. You know, we have to constantly be on top.
I wouldn't
we can't
trust
survive.
her. I would not trust her.
I wouldn't trust her either. Or I wouldn't go with her if she said, we're going to go this way, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go the opposite way you go. But, because I don't think she makes the best decisions. But, you know, I do think this was her best season.
100% agree.
Oh, yeah. I do like her better as a character, but I still don't like her decisions.
But part of liking her better as a character is really hating her.
We're still not near as bad as we hated Ramsay, but, you know.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, Ramsay was there for everyone to hate.
Well, we were talking about him. We feel so bad for the what's the character's name? I can't remember. But the character in real life, you know, he took to Twitter and he said, you know, thank you all for your support, realizing that, you know, I'm actually a good guy aside from the character. and Kate and I were talking about, you know, you're a great character and people just can't wait till you die in your show.
You're doing something well as an actor.
You're doing something great. But he did a great job. He was like the character you love to hate.
Yeah, he's actually coming to one of the Tampa Bay Comic-Cons in August. And I was like, who would want to get a picture with him? Because he's just that creepy. But he's not that person. But you'd see his picture as like Ramsay Bolton is coming to the Comic-Con.
Well, and that's what I can see is a lot of people wanting that picture where they pretend that like he's like killing them or something, or you know, just like weird stuff like that. Because believe me, people want all kinds of weird pictures. They really, really do.
Well, I hope he's able to break away from that character and do something in the future. Then it's like Daniel Radcliffe. It's like, you know, you see him and you think Harry Potter.
Yeah, he'll never be anything but Harry Potter.
So I hope Ramsay Bolton, you know, was able to do something else. But he was such a great
Joffrey
character.
just like quit acting.
Yep.
It was just because he was like never breaking free of that, or also he just went to college. You know, one or the other.
So another show that you both are into is Vikings, and I've seen previews of it when it first was airing. But what is it about?
Okay.
Besides Vikings.
Yeah, it's way more specific than just Vikings. So there's the central figure, Ragnar Lothbrok, who, if you read any Viking lore, is one of these central historical mythical figures. Like, he was a real guy.
Yeah, it was based on actual
real guy, but I'm sure the stories have become larger than life. But there are a lot of historical facts that track through the show and things he did. So it's basically centered around him and his family.
And it's not just the show. He's like in other storylines, I think, too, and like other. I'll have to go back and I read something the other day, but
I mean, Ragnar Lothbrok is just a Viking figure that's popular.
But
like,
it's just not. It's just not for this show. It's he actually
in all Norse lore.
Yeah.
So it starts with him and his wife Lagertha and their family, and they live in this small farming village of Kattegat in Scandinavia, which I'm not sure is Sweden or Norway, but I think maybe Sweden. I'm not sure. And so there's this really horrible Earl who's really unfair to the people. And Ragnar and his wife are just good, hardworking farmers, but then somehow ends up killing the Earl and becoming the Earl and just sort of has this populist rise to power and has this crazy idea that instead of just raiding East like they've always done, because the East is about tapped out now, he wants to go to England. And he's heard of all of these places and he's met wanderers and he found this navigation device that will allow them to chart the seas so they can actually get to, I forget what they call it. I know Francia is France, but England, I forget what they call it, but it's England.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's England. Yeah. And so after he defeats the Earl, he finally finds this crazy dude who builds ships named Floki and helps him build the ships to use the device. And in this whole thing with him originally is his brother Rollo, who was one of his original lieutenants. And so they go to England and they successfully get there and they raid a monastery and they pick up this priest Athelstan, who
this monk,
and becomes Ragnar's like closest, most trusted advisor. And it just kind of follows them through the years of how the quests kind of became bigger and all of the power struggles and all of the the family issues and how it was hard to sort of maintain. It's basically your political power struggle, family drama, but
and you really get into learning a lot about like the Viking, like their way of life, religion, religious practices.
Oh, Uppsala.
Yeah.
So there was this one episode in particular where even though they've taken this priest Athelstan in as a member of their family, there is this tradition in Viking lore, and this actually comes up in Neil Gaiman's American Gods as well, where there's this thing where every so many years you go to Uppsala and then there's nine of all of these things sacrificed, like 9 pigs, 9 dogs,
sheep, 9 cows,
and then also 9 men.
9 people.
Yeah. And so Ragnar, just because of his great love of Athelstan, is going to offer him as like the greatest sacrifice as one of the 9. But then the priest in charge of it finds Athelstan unworthy and is like, nope.
Well, because I think Athelstan was like, sure, yeah, I'm 100% on board. I love the Viking gods. And then but the priest sees that he's still clinging on to like his like Christianity. And so I think, right?
Exactly.
And so he's like, well, you're not a worthy sacrifice because you still kind of cling to your like original gods.
The point is that like after this episode, it's like the kind of thing where you go and you read history and the Norse lore, and you want to know more about like, was this a real thing that happened? And again, like there was a siege of Paris, and so I spent days reading about, did they actually do this? What was the outcome? Like, who were the actual rulers at the time? And so it's a brilliant historical drama.
But I think the monk, the most, I always butcher his name with
Athelstan.
I think the most interesting about his character, as he sort of walks the line of what he grew up with and sort of like his like Christian nature, but the love of the new gods of the Viking world. And
he's a man in 2 worlds.
He tries to embrace both because he sees uniqueness in both worlds.
He sees truths in both.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to watch his character. So I'm not going to ruin I don't want to say anything else about him because you have to watch it. But his character, I think, is one of the most interesting just because you see him try and balance these two, the love of both worlds, really. So
I guess one of the best ways, I think the biggest things to make people identify it with is the character of Ragnar is one of those villains that we want to love characters, like a Viking Tony Soprano or something. Like they do so much horrible stuff, and then they're like a bad person on some levels, but then they're also right.
But then you look at the Viking way of life and you're like, wow.
But he's also right. He's this visionary. He's the one who's in fact tolerant of other religious views, and so like
the fact that he brought on Athelstan as like his advisor, and
he's looked on upon as bad because he has a bigger vision of the world than the little people that he happens to be
surrounded by.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a compelling character. And also Lagatha, speaking of strong female characters,
she's amazing.
Oh my goodness, Catherine Winnick, the actress who plays her, is just one of those. She has that rare ability to be like beautiful and just terrifying, and can also have a lightness about her. And honestly, like, if it were up to me, if I were working for Marvel Studios, that is who exactly I would cast as Captain Marvel. But it's not, and so it's Brie Larson, I guess. Whatever. So yeah, that's Vikings.
So Vikings, highly recommend it. You'll be sucked in.
And also it has informed so much of our Renaissance Fair garb.
Oh my gosh.
So if we'd like to transition to Renaissance Fair.
We're just so inspired by the costume design,
the leather
characters and the leather, and like I said, once you get into kind of the costuming aspect of things in the cosplay world, you just look at things differently in terms of how, like, what you want to wear next.
Exactly.
So transitioning into Renaissance fairs, how did you get into Renaissance fairs? Was it something that you did when you were younger, or did you just stumble across it and fall in love with it?
So I after I watched that first season of Game of Thrones, I said I started reading, and I just wanted to make some kind of like fantasy, whatever kind of costume, and it was really inspired by the Targaryens. But I didn't want to be Daenerys Targaryen, and so I wanted to be one of the great ancestors. I think it was Visenya Targaryen, one of the people who came over with Aegon the First, one of his sisters. Because there's this Aegon, Visenya, and Rhaena. And Visenya was the one who was like the really like badass, like, you know, killer kind of. And so I wanted to make my own interpretation of that armor. The problem was I had no idea what I was going to do with that costume. I just wanted to make it. And then I remember like 4 years before that, we had been at a Renaissance fair with some friends of ours in North Carolina. And I'm like, well, people dress up for that kind of stuff. And so I did some research, and it turned out that here we have Annapolis, Maryland Renaissance Festival, which is a quite big festival.
One of the biggest ones on the East Coast, yeah.
And so I decided, yes, I'm making this costume for myself, and my husband is going to be a Taroshi sellsword, and we are going to Renaissance Festival. And it was the worst costume ever. Like, oh my God, it was like faux leather. Everything was hot glued on. It was a hot mess. My husband dyed his beard blue. The blue dye got like all in his beard and was running down his face. Like all my jewels and beading was falling off by the end of the day. But we had the best time and met these guys there who had these beautiful leather armors. And I was just like, oh my God, how do you even do this stuff? And so they said, well, you buy about $1,000 worth of leather working tools and watch YouTube videos. And then that's how you do it. And
that's
I'm like,
exactly what it is.
And I'm like, all right, then I'm going to make some leather. And that was it. And so now Renaissance festivals have become just one of the things in our, like a staple of our life.
And I would say I had been to Renaissance festivals in the past and always thought, I mean, I always, you mentioned earlier when we started about the, carrying around comic books and like hiding them and not wanting people to see them and, worried about like, it wasn't as mainstream, and so for me, it was like, I loved going to these things and people watching, but I guess I never had friends that I felt like would go with me or, I just never had anyone to dress up and go with me. So, and I met Kate and found, our love of costuming and cosplay and, the Ren Fair was really like the first thing before we got into cosplay, like, with the specific characters. And I just remember, I think it's like 5-6 years ago, I read The Other Boleyn Girl. And I mean, I had seen the movie and I just really loved Natalie Portman's, her French costumes. And she, thought it was beautiful. And I've always wanted this like big satin green dress. And so when Kate said, yeah, we're going to Renaissance Festival in Maryland, I said, okay, I'm making this dress. And to Kate's point of their first Renaissance Festival, it was kind of half sewed, half glue gun together, kind of falling apart. But now, through some lessons learned, I'm redoing it. And so we're hoping to go a few times this season. And hopefully I'll get to make some changes and bring it out again. But
I think that's always the thing is you debut a costume and it's only once you wear it all day on an event and then you figure out what you need to change about your costume.
Yeah. We've learned to make things in such a way that if you need to use the restroom, you can easily get out of it.
You need to do that at Renfest.
Because sometimes we'll make these elaborate costumes and then we're like, wait,
yes,
it's going to take 10 minutes to get back on
40 pounds of tool.
Yeah, 40 pounds of tool, So it's like, Now we build costumes in such a way that we make sure that we can easily get them on and off if needed. So.
I was reading somebody's blog about that, and they said that they had made a costume. I don't think it was a Ren Fair costume, but it was a superhero costume. And they said if they needed to go to the bathroom, it legit took 20 minutes to get the costume off for them to go.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, some of the stuff we see, especially on costume competition day. Because a lot of people love to make like the big mech armors and stuff. And like basically, I have to imagine you can't do anything once you're in that. You're in it. Yeah. And no, that doesn't seem fun.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit more savvy about costumes, and first off, making them so that unlike our first costumes we made, that they actually survive for multiple wears.
Yes.
It's something that, I can take off and throw in the washer versus having it like dry cleaned.
I don't think we had anything fall off at Awesome Con.
I don't think we did either.
I think our costumes, 100%, like each of the costumes we wore on all 3 days stayed together.
That was like a
first. That was the first. That was awesome.
One started to break on the way out the door, but I fixed it. But no, you get a little bit smarter and wiser about the way you construct things. And I think after several years of doing this, we finally kind of figured out the base for how to make certain things.
Well, certain key features.
Yeah.
One of the things that drew me when I was searching for guests was when I came across your pictures, how dynamic and different, like the different spins and takes on characters that you did with your costumes, the differences in either material or like the actual costume itself and the spin that you did on it was such a different direction than what you normally see for the character. Like your costumes are just amazing.
We're blushing.
I know, we are. We're like giddy over here.
I think that some of the things you're saying are things that,
we've hoped for.
We've tried really hard to do. Because like we said, there's so many different types of cosplayers, and we just love that there's people who love to do this sort of thing. But we really tried to kind of find our niche and what makes us a little different, what kind of stands out a little bit. And I think you saying some of those things is really nice.
So yeah, no, we were both, so heading into Awesome Con, we were kind of going a very different direction. Well, first of all, we were going to do like Star Wars Day, and I was going to wear my slave Leia, and I was going to Padme, and then we were just making our, I already had a pre-existing like regular spandex Ms. Marvel, and Natalie was making the very traditional Psylocke, and
just gears.
Honestly, like the more we were looking, like a month out, we're like, you know what?
Oh no, we doing something different.
We're doing exactly. Like let's change this up a little bit, because I don't know, like I don't want to be just another leotard in the crowd. We just felt like we wanted to take some of our biggest strengths. Exactly, that's what I was trying to say,
and really put them into our
showcase
showcase them. And unfortunately, it's an expensive hobby. The leatherwork stuff is, it's not as cheap as like spandex. But it's how do we make that costume the next level? Like how do we? And so I think that Kate and I, it was like I think more of a brainstorming session one night. We just said, we're doing leather, and
well, also I think I was I kind of like from Ms. Marvel, I was like, all right, so if I wanted to design a costume that would be, maybe a little more battle ready, a little bit, harder edge, what would I do? And so that's kind of what I came up with. I had a different idea, which just didn't work out at all and cost me an entire weekend of my life and made me have a nervous breakdown on Monday, like 4 days before Awesome Con. But in the end, it all worked out. So,
if you see any cosplay memes about, oh no, the con's coming up, I'm not getting any sleep. If you see any of those memes, it's all true. It's all real life.
True. It's just so real.
Because it's like
it doesn't matter how well you plan ever.
Kate and I try so hard to plan before every Comic-Con that we space out our costumes and when we make them and our design, and that we have everything done a week prior so we can get a nice, great night's sleep before the no. That is not how it happens.
But I will say, so one of the other things we're trying to do is look for characters that will be known but not done to death. There is, and I promise you this, and if we ever go back on it, please call us out.
Yes.
There is never a day when you will see either of us, and not to criticize anyone,
but we're not criticizing at all.
It's just we personally do not ever want to be Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy. Because it just seems like there's such
a following for those characters, and but we want to make sure that when we go to, I think it's fun when you go to a Comic-Con and you see a character you don't normally
different
see.
Stuff.
Yeah, so it's kind of like just a little thing we joke about, but and if we did, we would probably try to do a spin on it.
Exactly, like post-apocalyptic or like something weird.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like I think actually what led to Doctor Strange and Clea Was I feel like you were just researching, like...
Yeah, I was just trying to research Marvel women, and I came across a few versions of Clea, and I thought, this is a really cool character. I showed Kate, and she said, oh my god,
I'm so obsessed with Doctor Strange right now.
Yeah, so she's like, I'm doing a gender bend.
Yeah.
So,
which I do like half the time, weirdly.
Yeah, but I mean, But but we were talking about with the gal we were meeting earlier for the commission, we really like to take strong characters and do a twist with them. So even though, I would say we do a lot of gender bends, but...
There are female cosplayers who would take issue with that, perhaps. Like, oh, there are so many female characters out there. Why can't you just be a female character? But that's what we kind of like, or at least myself, I love taking just a character that I love, if they happen to be a female character, whatever. And so reinterpreting it in a way that's feminine, yet still strong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the characters, the people that cosplay, and they do the traditional characters, or even they do a spin on the character. But I really do enjoy seeing a completely total transformation of just gender bend, like either the gender bend costumes or them doing like a steampunk version of a costume. Or at our convention, there was a Sailor Freddie Mercury.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't get much on board with the Sailor Moon stuff, but I love Freddie Mercury, so I would love to see pictures of that. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look that up.
But not to devalue. Like, we love when we see a costume done well,
doesn't matter who it is,
like a beautifully done costume on point with the character. But I think that lately we've just really loved to take the creative next step of reinventing a character with sort of another style that we think is fun and creative. So that's just been, I think that's where we started, and then we've just kind of evolved to this point where we like to take some sort of creative interpretation.
And so then our next step is we're both taking a dip into the gender bend pool.
Yeah. I know. Do you want to say that one?
Yeah, why not?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I personally loved Daredevil season 2. I know a lot of people were like unhappy with certain things about it. But one night, because my Winter Soldier costume has gotten really good reception, and I was just sitting there watching Daredevil with my husband one night, and I was like, oh my god, I can do the same kind of thing with a Daredevil costume and make like a girl Daredevil. And so I was talking to Natalie about this and just telling her I was like so obsessed with this idea. And she's like, well, who would kind of go with Daredevil? And so I was like, oh, well, Elektra, or like, blah, blah, blah. And Natalie's like, well, that's kind of boring costume. Is there anything more interesting I could do? I'm like, you could be the Punisher.
That's a lot. I've seen a lot of Elektra cosplays, and, and seeing the costume, I just don't see where I could take a lot of creative genius with it that's like much different than what I've seen. So and it's a cool costume, but I just don't see a lot of sort of
where
I could go next with it, like take it to that next level. So I think with Punisher, there's a lot of opportunity to do something really cool with it.
So I'm not sure when we'll get that one ready, but
I don't think it'll be
probably next year,
but maybe next year. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely on the horizon.
Well, we joke sometimes on, especially on Instagram and social media, a lot of people will pose or they'll kind of put the question out there for their followers, what cosplay should I do next? And Kate and I kind of joke that, and that's awesome too, because I like feedback. But Kate and I joke because we have like a whole laundry list of all the characters we want to do.
It could span for like decades.
Yeah, we could span a decade and have them lined up.
Cosplays in there.
Oh yeah, and recently we've tried to start, and meeting a lot of people at the different Comic-Con events and just through social media, we meet a lot of people, and so we've been entertaining the thought of trying to get with people and plan more group costumes, because we think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. Again, as I mentioned before, Firefly. I would love to do
Firefly. Yes.
But then my other is I would love to do a Saga group cosplay, because I just. We ran into at AwesomeCon, there was a guy who was the Lion Cat, and if you don't read Saga, you don't know what I'm talking about, but trust me, the Lion Cat is where it's at.
Yeah. And you both have now started I don't know what you would call it. It's that you started Conjure Corps.
Okay, yes. What is it? That's an interesting question. What is it? Cosplay duo. Okay, it is a cosplay duo. It's not quite yet a company. It's more a concept, but it will hopefully be more of a company eventually.
Well, we've spent so much time doing this for fun over the years, and Kate's a lawyer by day. I'm a project manager, and we both work for the man, in Washington D.C. And we've been doing this as a hobby, but we love doing it. And if there's some way that we could figure out how to do this more full time versus part time for fun,
or at least subsidize our hobby,
Yeah, because cosplay is expensive.
It's not cheap.
And that's one thing we like to blog about in our website is, like workarounds or how to do things, cheaper or more easily, because we love to find the workarounds where we can. I mean, obviously make things of great quality so it lasts a long time, but, just learn from other people. And we hope that when people go to our website that we hopefully save them a lot of mistakes and, maybe they can learn from what we did and do a better job, But I mean, I think that, we feed so much of the online community helping us with our costumes and like techniques. And we do a lot of research and we find what other people have done that we like and we kind of take from it what we will and do our own thing. And so we kind of just put it out there to share with everybody else and hope that, we help the community out a little bit more.
And in that same line, I think one of our next steps is hopefully starting to design some leather patterns.
Absolutely.
And doing some more instructionals. And we've gotten so much feedback about these things being amazing. And I mean, one of our goals is to share with people, like, yes, you can do this as well. Here are 5 tools that you need. And here is, here's a pattern. Here's the step-by-step. You too can make yourself a leather Ms. Marvel corset thingy.
Because when we started, Kate was a little bit more of like the leather expert here, and she's self-taught, but I was really intimidated by the leather stuff, and I thought, there's no way I can make these things. It looks so difficult. And when Kate really we spent a few nights and she just really kind of sat me down and showed me how to make the patterns. And
there's like 10 basic steps.
It's really like 10 basic steps. Once you learn them, like you can do it yourself if you have a little bit of creativity. And so I told Kate, I said, we really need to tailor this for the cosplay market and
Renaissance Fair
market. People could make these things if these were more accessible. And there's just not a lot out there in terms of cosplay and leather. It's I think when we see cosplay or when we see patterns for leather, it's like chaps or
moccasins,
cowboy stuff or how to make moccasins. It's
gun holsters,
which
can be useful, but
those can be useful for some cosplay. But there wasn't a lot out there in terms of like here's how to make a corset for Ren Fair. Here's how to make a barbarian skirt, or
a leather bra, There aren't a lot of resources for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we had to get creative, and we just thought we could take these lessons learned and turn them into something that
that we can share with people.
Yeah, so
that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, okay. I think our direction is a little bit more blogging, how-to stuff, pattern making,
but still showing up at events.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We get so much out of, creating things and wearing them. Like that's our favorite. I think lately we've been approached about a lot of commission opportunities, and you
want to do them all.
We want to do them all, but we have full-time jobs by day
and husbands.
You work, and husbands. You work, you have children. Like, how hard it is to have
to do your own
to pay the bills during the day and still have like your hobby at night, so we're just in that weird funk of where we're trying to find a good, trying to figure out our routine.
What's the next step? Yeah.
And what our next step is. So, we would love to take this more than just more professional than part-time.
But not professional cosplayers per se.
Yeah, I would say, more costume making and design.
Yeah, probably.
So we're still figuring that out, but we still have a pretty good direction for kind of where we think we're going with this. But
as for now, it's just a lot of times. We've learned a lot this year.
We've learned a lot,
and we'll
continue to learn a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a year for learning.
Have you ever been invited to like host a panel at conventions on doing the leatherworking or how you do your costumes?
I would die.
That is actually one of our goals for the upcoming, not maybe next year, but maybe the next 2 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely getting those contacts and getting things known out there.
What we'd like to think that and I'm kind of speaking for myself, I think, I don't know if Kate this is a new question, I think, for us. I think we're really humbled by the fact that we're surrounded by so many talented people when we go to these events, that we really kind of want to step back, go to panels, see how people do these, because we don't want to walk in acting like we're expert. I mean, we have, I'm going to pat myself on our backs a little bit. We know we pride ourselves in the work that we do at our craftsmanship. Like we've had some people tell us that, to crank costumes out, like sometimes you have to cut corners and maybe cut the craftsmanship that you put into things. And we really pride ourselves on that. And so, and we're not, like I said, to each cosplayer their own, but that's like our thing. We really like to do beautiful detail and take our time with things. And I mean, it's a hard balance, but I think that we really want to absorb the different panels.
And, one thing is actually, we had this experience at AwesomeCon this year.
Yeah.
Is we're trying to learn a lot by going to panels and learn how to be on a panel. Because that in and of itself is not necessarily natural for everyone, because just because you do a thing doesn't mean you're good at talking about a thing.
You're not good at teaching or presenting necessarily.
Or making it interesting to people. Because we've been to some where clearly the people were very, very talented, but they just got a little bit lost. And so we want to, before we would take that next step, we want to make sure that we could do it.
That we would be on our A game.
Yes.
That we would be well prepared. So I think for right now, we're just trying to make sure that we do the appropriate research to make sure that, we're kind of on par with the expectations for a cosplay panel, and that, we don't kind of set people up for these expectations that, we do these amazing costumes, but we're not really good at teaching how to make them. So we just, we're working on that through our blog and making videos.
Well, exactly. So, we'll start actually posting more instructional videos on the website and kind of growing it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a dream. 100%.
No, we would love to. So so long answer to your short question. We would love to do that. We're just trying to make sure that
we don't
we're well informed of that we're well informed of how we need to proceed with it, and that we're able to present it in such a way that it's good for folks.
Yeah, that it's interactive and meaningful and
because I think so much more goes into a presentation than just saying here's how I made it. Because we watch so many how-to videos and we'll fast forward through things because certain parts are a little bit boring.
It's more about how telling people it's a balance of how did I do it versus how will you do this, and how could why would you want to do this? And I think that's part of what. Or
some of it too. Actually, when I go over things with Kate, she might think something seems like common sense, but for me, being kind of a newbie to certain techniques that she uses, she's like, "Oh, I didn't even think to explain it to you in that way because I just kind of thought this was common sense." So I think that we learn a lot from each other and our technique and everything, and I think that. Definitely us being kind of like a cosplay duo, we learn a lot from each other, and I think that would help us with that, and kind of practicing and, before we take it live.
Well, even just doing the instructional videos, I think.
Absolutely, that's helped us a lot too. But so no, answer your question. No, we have not been invited yet. We would love to, but we hope to start actively doing that.
I think before that we would have a booth.
Yeah, we might have a few booths, but we've been practicing a little bit on social media when people message us and oh, how'd you make this? How'd you do that? And we direct them to our website. We'll send them videos that we've watched, even if we didn't link it on our website. We'll direct people to a few different things that we've consulted for help on particular items. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We
didn't invent everything. So.
Yeah, we did not invent everything, and that's a big piece to us too. Is we try to give credit all around. We would not be here if it was not for the numerous people out there sharing their information in their videos. So credit all around.
Exactly. If we can just be a link in matching.
Absolutely, yeah. And if people love to go to our website for those things, absolutely, I would love to point them in the direction of things that helped us.
Yep.
So.
Well, with that, where can people find you?
The first place people can find us is on our website, which is www.conjurecorps.com, and that's ConjureCorps.com. And that's where you'll find a lot of not only photos of our finished works, but then you'll find, like we were saying, like how-to blogs, a lot of photos of work in progress.
We're trying to do more videos.
And we're going to try to get more of our instructional videos up. That is one of the next
That helps us a lot. We
goals.
love watching videos, so we're trying to do more videos.
And the other place that we are most prevalent is on Instagram, and that's just at Conjure Corps on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're also on Twitter, but that's, I would say, more passive than active presence.
Yeah, Twitter's a little bit. Yeah, it's just like kind of a side note. Pinterest, we put a lot of our work on Pinterest too. So folks like certain things that we make, they can pin them.
Yeah, especially a lot of our work in progress photos are up on Pinterest. So if you're interested,
we try to put a lot of our work also on DeviantArt, just as another place for inspiration. If folks kind of like,
because I know it's like different crowds like Pinterest and DeviantArt, so.
We try to make sure that we're representing in a lot of the different forums, but those are the major ones.
Yeah, definitely.
You both seem to be great stewards of the cosplay community. Like, just you're doing this stuff for yourself, but you're also being this really great access point for a lot of other people who seem to be getting into or wanting to get into what you guys do. I mean, between your website and the way that you're helping out other people by just pointing them in that direction, you both seem to be taking a good role in that.
I think that's what we love about being part of this community generally, is just the number of people we've met who have just been so free with advice and recommendations and pointing you to resources. And as much as, I mean, obviously we love the making of the costumes, but it's just a great community to be part of, and as such we want to sort of do our part to give back to it.
Absolutely. And I think that, it's one of the things that I've found so far is, when the community itself, like how supportive the community can be, there are people that, I hate to base this off like followers, but there's people on Instagram who have like, tens of thousands of followers. We'll ask them a question like, hey, how'd you do this or how'd you do that? And they answer back like within 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Or they'll answer back that day. And I didn't even expect a reply because I'm thinking they're so busy.
Or they're so popular.
They must get so many messages. And some of them are so nice. And so, so for us, it's a humbling experience when people reach out to us and say, hey, how'd you do that? Or how'd you do this? And we point them to our website. And we just let them know, if you have any other questions, just let us know. Because we know how it is, to be new at something or just beginning. Because like Kate and I said, we were just gluing things together, 3-4 years ago. And now we're kind of getting to a point where we're
getting emails that are like, we consider you the armor experts.
Yeah, we had someone say that the other day. We almost died.
I think humbling is
it's very humbling.
Perfect word.
Absolutely. Because I would never in a million years, if you told me, you seem like an armor expert, I could point you to like 50 other people I think are amazing, way over what we do. But I think it's very humbling for people to say that they love our artwork.
It
basically.
is. It really is.
And
it's we've hoped that we could.
It's surreal.
Yeah.
I think is the best way to put it. But no, people in the community are so nice, and if there's anyone listening to your podcast that has questions about the way we did things, or just just wants to follow up, like we're happy to answer any questions or emails.
Absolutely. Email us. That's the other place to get a hold of us, at just conjurecorps@gmail.com. So we're always happy to interact with anybody. It's fun for us. It's exciting for us to know that somebody would actually be interested in what we think.
Well, I really wanted to thank you both for taking time out of your schedules, because I mean, you both have super busy jobs. I can't even imagine, but just taking the time to sit down and talk with me about like the things that you're into, because I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, well, thank you. We've enjoyed it too, and we're really happy that you gave us all this time to ramble on and on about our really nerdy interests.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. I mean, it's very flattering to think that you thought our stuff was cool enough that you wanted to interview us. So thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like we didn't touch on enough things, and I would love to in the future sit down with you both again if time is an option for you
like
both.
A focus follow-up episode.
Right?
Like a one narrow topic episode.
Yeah, we'll have to pick one. I don't think we can talk about a few.
Yeah. Like when we finally get our group cosplay planned or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe like a whole like group cosplay episode or something.
I'm up for whatever you guys want to talk about.
Oh, cool. It's really great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.